It's the Spooky Show with Willie.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody... Ah! Oh, God, ghouls, you scared me, but greetings all the same. Welcome to the Spooky Show. I'm your host, Willie Muse, coming to you from the
void of unimaginable horror.
And I was just trying my best to not be chicken, but as you can clearly see, I failed. Living in the void, I see a lot of monsters. Vampires, witches, Frankenstein, werewolves, demons, big feet, goblins, hobgoblins, which is a bunny mixed with a goblin, zombies, ghosts, Tilda Swinton. But no matter how many monsters I see, there's still one that I'm way too scared to summon. Though many children spent many slumber parties chanting her name into a mirror, I could never bring myself to play the game. That said, though her name strikes fear into my heart, I don't really know much about her, What's her backstory? Where did she come from? Why does she live in a mirror? There's a lot of mystery there, and this brings me to my question of the day, which is, who is Bloody Mary? Oh, God. Oh, I just said her name a third time, didn't I? I hope I didn't just summon her. Ah! Okay, that was just a jump scare, ghost. We're good. Anywho, before we can dig deep into her backstory, we should probably cover some of the basics. For those of you who, like me, were frightened and lonely as a child, Bloody Mary is a game where you go into a bathroom and say Bloody Mary into a mirror 3 times, and it's supposed to summon some sort of a scary ghost lady. The game is usually played by kids at slumber parties as a way to prove that they're brave because, well, I don't really know how else to say it. Kids are dumb. Before we get too deep into this, I'm going to say up front that tracing the origin of this legend was difficult because, like a lot of urban legends, there are a lot of variations on it. In some versions, you say Bloody Mary's name 13 times instead of 3. In others, you don't just say the ghost's name, but instead taunt her by saying, Bloody Mary, I killed your baby. And in others still, she doesn't just appear, but actually reaches out of the mirror and scratches whoever summoned her, which honestly, they probably deserve for killing her baby. Just as there are a lot of variations on how to summon the ghost, there are also a lot of different candidates for who the ghost might be, so rather than yammering on, why don't I just get to naming some of the best of them, starting with the woman who actually wasn't named Mary at all. That said, what she lacked in the Mary department, she more than made up for in the bloody. Elizabeth Bathory was a Hungarian noblewoman who may have also been one of the worst serial killers in history. According to some accounts of the time, Bathory was a sadistic monster who tortured and killed her servants just for funsies. The stuff she did was pretty gross, so I won't go too deep into it, but let's just say that she was said to have a propensity for making people cook and eat their own ass meat in front of her. And that's the thing I feel comfortable sharing with you, so yeah, she was a real fucked up broad. According to some estimates, she killed somewhere between 30 and 650 people, and as her legend as a bloodthirsty monster grew with time, the rumor began to spread that the reason she killed was so that she could fill a bath with her victim's blood and bathe in it as some sort of perverse form of skincare, which is just a disgusting beauty regimen if you ask me. I'll just stick to my goose placenta face mask, thank you very much. Bathory's strong association with blood and the fact that she was pants-shittingly terrifying make her a good fit for the Bloody Mary of legend. But that said, her first name is still a strike against her, so let's move on to someone else. Our next candidate not only had the first name Mary, but she also literally carried the nickname Bloody Mary in her lifetime, so I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Mary I was Queen of England from 1553 to 1558, and though her reign only lasted 5 years, it probably felt like an eternity for the non-Catholics in her kingdom because, well, she was putting them Protestant sons of bitches to death by the buttload. The daughter of the infamous Henry VIII, Mary had some understandable daddy issues. She wasn't a fan of the Church of England he had established for the express purpose of divorcing her mom, and so when she became queen, she sought to reestablish England's ties with the Catholic Church by any means necessary. Aside from the fiery hatred she felt for her father, one of her driving forces in wanting to reinstate Catholicism in her kingdom was the fact that she suffered from what's known as false pregnancy, which is, unfortunately, exactly what it sounds like. When Mary gained some weight and didn't get a period, she understandably thought that she was pregnant. Since siring an heir is an especially important part of being royalty, you can imagine how devastated she was when she found out that she wasn't pregnant at all, it was just her body crapping out on her. She concluded that she was being punished by God for allowing Protestant heretics to live in her kingdom, and well, let's just say she didn't let a lot of them live in her kingdom for very much longer. Mary is responsible for taking the lives of just under 300 Protestants, most of which she burned alive at the stake, which, if that never happens to you, consider yourself lucky. For all the deaths she ordered, she was deemed Bloody Mary by her enemies, which is how she ties back into this episode I'm making right now. People who believe that Queen Mary and Bloody Mary are one and the same say that the reason she appears in your mirror is that she's looking for the baby she never got to have. This not only explains the variant on the game in which people say, Bloody Mary, I killed your baby, but also it makes it feel infinitely more cruel, which honestly I didn't even think was possible. Though Queen Mary is a very good candidate, there's still one woman left who's even more likely to be the Mary in question, and she's also the only person I hadn't heard of before I started researching this episode. Her name is Mary Worth, and I couldn't find a picture of her, so please enjoy this picture I drew instead. An older version of the Bloody Mary game had the participant look in the mirror and say, I believe in Mary Worth, so it would only make logical sense that more than anyone else, this is the exact Mary we're looking for. Although, unfortunately, this begs a new question, and that question is, who the shit is Mary Worth? I found two very different stories to explain who Mary Worth is, and they both end with her being put to death as a witch. In the first story, Mary Worth is a massive douchemonger who lived in Chicago during the time of the Civil War. She was said to have kidnapped a bunch of escaped slaves and chained them in her barn, which, honestly, there's no good reason someone might do that. The second version of the Mary Worth story I found paints a much less sinister picture of a woman who just happened to live by herself on the outskirts of town and practice Wicca, which of course meant that by the standards of the day, she was considered evil. When local children started disappearing, the crazy old bat brewing potions out of her cabin in the woods was the logical suspect, and she was put to death as a result. Based on my admittedly limited understanding of history, I'm more inclined to believe the latter version of the story, because if I may quote myself, history was not kind to women. God, I was so young there. Anyway, though the idea that some innocent woman from history was put to death for stupid reasons is always a likely explanation to a question on the show, the actual answer to who is Mary Worth is actually a third option that I haven't brought up yet. She wasn't a real person at all. The more I looked into the identity of Mary Worth, the more it became clear that she was just made up for the game and given a backstory after the fact. This unfortunately brings me to the most anticlimactic explanation for the identity of Bloody Mary, and that's that she was just a made-up figure who evolved over many years of games and storytelling. I know, I'm sorry. People were summoning ghouls with mirrors long before anyone ever said the name Bloody Mary. Divination with the use of a mirror is such a common practice that it actually has its own word. It's called catoptromancy. 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 I don't know if I'm saying that right. The game we know today probably just evolved from years and years of people trying to scare themselves with a mirror and seeing what stuck. And if that's an unsatisfying answer, then let me give you a couple of reasons for why the things that stuck are the things that stuck. And hopefully they're a little more interesting. I'll start by telling you one possible reason behind the name Mary. The history of the Bloody Mary ritual can be traced to an earlier game where it was said that women who walked backwards up the stairs in the dark while looking into a mirror would be able to see the face of their future husband. Another way to put this would be that women who did this would see the face of the person that they were going to fill in the blank, the person they were going to marry. Mary. It's a homophone, you see. This unfortunately might also explain the name behind Mary Worth, because, well, back in the day, a woman's worth was largely derived from her husband, because history is bad and the future is female. I don't know what to tell you. Moving on. Let's go from explaining the Mary part to the bloody part now, which also relates to young girls, albeit in a far more icky way. At the end of the day, the game is essentially a rite of passage meant to prove that the participant is brave. And since the majority of the participants in the game are prepubescent girls, it makes sense that the creature they were summoning would be something scary to that particular demographic. And honestly, what could be scarier than their imminent ascent into womanhood? With that in mind, it makes sense where blood would come from, because honestly, there's no better representation for the terrors of becoming a woman than, well, you know, perioding. Kind of feel pretty gross about wearing this suit now. Anyway, let's just say it. Being a woman is hard. Mary Worth wasn't real, but there were many real people like her who were put to death essentially for just being a woman who didn't fit into society in the right way. Elizabeth Bathory might have been a serial killer like I described, but a lot of news sources think it's equally likely that she was just a woman in power that some man wanted to take down, so he tarnished her reputation in the meanest way imaginable. Queen Mary was... Well, actually, she was kind of a monster, but monster or not, with her false pregnancies, she suffered the sort of body horror that no man can possibly fathom. No matter how you do it, becoming a woman is a scary process, and it takes balls. So who is Bloody Mary? Though it might sound trite to say, the answer is that Bloody Mary is just a reflection of whoever's playing the game. She's our worst fears reflected back at us, and though that's arguably scarier than any ghoul, it also means I can probably do this, and nothing will happen. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. See? I'm good. Anyway, that's it for me, guys, but before I go, let me just say that this was a particularly complicated subject, and so I'm sure that I missed something important. So if you can think of something that I missed, please leave it in the comment, because I'd love to hear it. Also, please like, subscribe, share, name your firstborn child after me, anything you can do to help me grow. Just like Bloody Mary, the more you say my name, the more likely I am to appear in other people's feeds. And so let's keep this thing going so that in the future we can make these outros a little bit shorter. Other than that, I don't have much to say besides I'm Willie Muse, and this was The Spooky Show. See you later, ghouls.